Our homes are meant to be the safest havens, where we find solace and rest regardless of the day's challenges. Yet, there are times when these supposed sanctuaries become the very source of our fears. While paranormal activities often grab headlines, more often than not, the most unsettling fear often comes from fellow humans. Take the case of Daniel LaPlante, who turned breaking into people's houses and instilling fear into a disturbing habit. Sadly, this frightening pursuit went beyond just trying to scare people. He ended up killing an entire family. Daniel LaPlante, born on May 16, 1970, in Townsend, Massachusetts, faced a challenging childhood that lacked detailed documentation. In his early teenage years, he resided with his mother, Elaine, stepfather, David Moore, and two brothers, Stephen and Matthew. Daniel's youth was marked by significant hardships, enduring both physical, psychological, and sexual abuse from his father and stepfather. His academic journey was hindered by dyslexia, a condition for which he received no support. Furthermore, he grappled with a nearly non-existent social life, as his peers deemed him creepy and weird. Struggling with hygiene issues, he often attended school with an unpleasant odor and unwashed clothes, causing classmates to steer clear of him. In his early teenage years, Daniel started seeing a psychiatrist as suggested by school authorities, who diagnosed him with hyperactivity disorder. Regrettably, rather than helping Daniel, the psychiatrist subjected him to sexual abuse, which persisted for more than a year. As a result, Daniel concluded the sessions in a mentally deteriorated state, worse than how he initially started. Neighbors described Daniel as frightening and odd, setting the stage for his eventual descent into a life of criminal activities. Daniel, at the age of 16, had a knack for breaking into people's homes. Sometimes he'd steal things, while other times he'd just rearrange items, leaving occupants unsettled when they realized someone had been in their home. At this point in his life, Daniel got the phone number of a local girl named Annie Andrews. Annie, only 15, lived with her father, Brian, and her younger sister, Jessica. Their family was already vulnerable, having recently lost their mother to cancer after a prolonged battle. Daniel and Annie developed a telephone friendship, with Daniel portraying himself to be someone quite different. He claimed to attend a nearby high school and even said he was the captain of the football team. After several calls, Annie agreed to go on a date with him. However, when they met, she was disappointed to find he didn't match the person he described. Despite the letdown, they went for ice cream. During the date, Daniel strangely focused on the details of Annie's mother's death, making the experience uncomfortable. Annie was relieved when the date ended, knowing there wouldn't be a second one. Meanwhile, Annie's father was working hard to support the family and dealing with the grief of losing his wife. He also supported his daughters through the challenging time of losing their mother. Working long hours, Annie's father left the girls alone at home during the day. In the fall of 1986, Annie and Jessica started hearing strange noises. They informed their dad, who dismissed these sounds as typical house creaks. Oddly, the noises never happened when their father was at home. One evening, the girls discovered writing on the basement wall, causing them to panic. They urgently called their father, asking him to come home. Upon his return, Brian quickly went in the house to investigate. He carefully searched the basement, finding nothing. Moving to the other rooms, he still came up empty-handed. Brian started to feel a sense of relief, thinking the girls' imagination might be getting the best of them. However, as he opened the door to Annie's room, there it was. A stranger in the corner, wearing his deceased wife's wedding dress and clutching a hatchet. Brian was shocked and couldn't believe what he was seeing. Then he quickly fled the house and contacted the police. When the authorities arrived, it initially appeared that the intruder had escaped. However, sharp-eyed officers noticed a hidden access point to a crawl space under the stairs. Upon inspection, they found Daniel LaPlante hiding there. Moreover, within the crawl space and voids between the walls of the Andrews family home, they discovered food debris, clothing, wrappers, indicating that Daniel had been living there for around 2 months. Daniel had been secretly watching the family's daily routines. When Brian was at work, he would bother the two girls by moving things, flickering lights, and making noises. Daniel got arrested on December 11, 1986, and faced charges like breaking and entering and armed assault in a dwelling. Since he was 16, he was initially put in a juvenile facility. His parents, seemingly indifferent to his well-being, viewed the situation as a chance to reduce the number of mouths to feed. Living a life marked by drug addiction, they relied on government assistance programs for support. But when they decided to try him as an adult, he became eligible for bail. Daniel went back to his illegal activities, breaking into houses to unsettle people. During one break-in, he went as far as to steal 2 handguns from a neighbor. On November 16, 1987, there was a break-in at Priscilla and Andrew Gustafson's home. Priscilla, 33, and Andrew, 34, had lived in their secluded house on Saunders Road in Townsend for 5 years. The Gustafson couple, Priscilla and Andrew, had 2 kids, 7-year-old Abigail and 5-year-old William. They were also expecting their 3rd child. Andrew worked at a small law firm nearby, and Priscilla was a teacher at the town's cooperative play school. They reported a break-in to the police, something that had become more common in the preceding months. Items were moved around, and a few were stolen, but nothing valuable. On December 1, 1987, Priscilla picked up William from the babysitter at 1 p.m. and returned home at 3:30 p.m. Abigail arrived home on the school bus. Andrew was busy with a real estate deal at work, hoping to celebrate with Priscilla later. However, when he called her, she didn't answer the phone, which was unusual. After a few unsuccessful attempts to call, Andrew, feeling uneasy, decided to drive home. When he arrived, he saw Priscilla's car in the driveway, and at that moment he knew something was wrong. He entered the house around 5:30 p.m., and the first thing he noticed was an unusual quietness. He called for his wife a few times, but got no answer. He slowly made his way upstairs, still calling out for his family. But with each step he made, cold sweat dripped from his body. And when he finally made his way upstairs, he saw the picture that would haunt him for life. He found Priscilla's body on the bed and her head covered with a pillow. It was clear she had been shot. Andrew, scared and paralyzed, called the police but couldn't bring himself to search for his children. When the police arrived, they escorted Andrew out before searching the property. They found William's body in an upstairs bathroom. He had been drowned. Abigail's body was discovered downstairs. She had been beaten and drowned. A massive police hunt started, shocking the quiet community. A message on the wall was noted, and the similarity to a previous crime at the Andrews house couldn't be ignored. On December 2, 1987, the day after the tragic murders, Daniel found himself under police scrutiny. Though the authorities suspected his involvement, they lacked sufficient evidence to formally charge him. Undeterred, the police persisted in their efforts to construct a case against Daniel. Living less than a mile away from the Gustafson family, Daniel's proximity raised suspicions. The two residences were only separated by a wooded area. During a thorough search of this woodland, the police stumbled upon crucial evidence: a shirt, gloves, and a family nameplate belonging to the Gustafsons. These discoveries established a direct link between Daniel and the heinous crimes, providing the much-needed breakthrough. Returning to apprehend Daniel, the police were met with an unexpected development. He had vanished. A warrant for his arrest was promptly issued, triggering an extensive manhunt. Descriptions circulated, portraying Daniel as roughly 5 feet 8 inches tall, weighing around 135 pounds, with brown hair and eyes. Authorities cautioned the public that he might be armed and was deemed extremely dangerous. The pursuit reached a critical juncture around 6:30 p.m. on December 3rd, when Daniel was discovered hiding in a dumpster in a lumber yard in Ayr, which was approximately 10 miles away from the crime scene. This marked the culmination of an intense search, bringing a sense of closure to the unfolding investigation. Upon his arrest, reports circulated that Daniel displayed an unsettling demeanor, even laughing. Subsequent investigations uncovered additional forensic evidence, notably a strand of Abigail's hair on Daniel's clothing. Bullet casings discovered at Daniel's residence perfectly matched those from the bullets that ended Priscilla's life. In light of these findings, Daniel faced 3 murder charges. Despite vehemently proclaiming his innocence and asserting that he was at home watching music videos during the crime, his alibi remained unverifiable. The assessment of his competency to stand trial ensued. Jury selection commenced on October 3rd of the following year. Daniel entered a plea of not guilty. The prosecution presented a formidable case featuring over 50 witnesses and an array of compelling forensic evidence. Strikingly, the defense opted not to call any witnesses, contending that all evidence against Daniel was circumstantial. Their stance centered on the argument that while the presented evidence suggested Daniel's potential involvement, it fell short of conclusively proving his guilt. The trial unfolded as a complex legal battle, with the weight of circumstantial evidence hanging in the balance. The defense team emphasized that the evidence pointed towards the LaPlante family as a whole rather than singling out Daniel. They argued that he was unfairly being used as a scapegoat. On October 25, 1988, Daniel was found guilty of all 3 murders. The subsequent day, he received 3 life sentences. The prosecution pushed for these sentences to be served consecutively, while the defense sought concurrent terms. The judge sided with the prosecution, decreeing that Daniel would serve 3 consecutive 15-year sentences before being eligible for parole. Almost 3 decades later, on March 22, 2017, a re-sentencing hearing occurred in Middlesex Superior Court, Massachusetts. Daniel, considering himself a juvenile at the time of the crimes, requested a sentence reduction. He anchored his plea on the change in the law, reducing the maximum term for juvenile incarceration without parole consideration to 30 years in 2014. However, this law wasn't retroactive and didn't apply to Daniel's case.
I do not have the words to fully express my profound sorrow, but I am truly sorry for the harm that I have caused. In the very essence of who I am, the depth of my soul, I am sorry.
Despite expressing remorse and apologizing for his crimes during the hearing, Daniel's plea for a reduced sentence was not granted. But the story does not end here. After a thorough evaluation by a forensic psychiatrist, Daniel was diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, highlighting his complete lack of empathy for the crimes he committed. In the 2017 review, the judge handed him the maximum penalty of 45 years before parole consideration. Fast forward to 2019, Daniel appealed his sentence, arguing that it was unconstitutional and amounted to cruel and unusual punishment. Success in this appeal would have opened the door for parole consideration within 2 years. However, on Thursday, June 6, 2019, the Supreme Judicial Court unanimously ruled against Daniel, affirming that he must serve the entire 45-year sentence before parole eligibility. This means he'll have to wait until the year 2030, when he turns 62, for a chance at parole. Recently, there was a movie released named Boy in the Walls, drawing inspiration from this very incident. The plot follows Elisa Jensen and Chris, a recently married couple who moved to their rural Connecticut home with their son, Theo. They begin to sense an eerie feeling of being watched. As Elisa hears strange voices in their house, the shocking discovery of Joe, who has been living secretly within their home, unfolds. The screenplay, crafted by Katrina Onstad and David Weaver, drew inspiration from various real-life frogging incidents, with a particular nod to the 1986 Massachusetts case of Daniel LaPlante. Therefore, it's safe to say that the film is deeply rooted in true events, particularly the infamous Daniel LaPlante case. If you have thoughts, let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe.